challenge. So let me share my screen here. Okay, just a quick check. Can everybody see my screen here? Thumbs up. All right, that's looking good. Okay, so that word commit and that word commitment even came up to our group. Sometimes it's important to think about is actions versus intentions. Okay, so I'm going to start us off with a little riddle. If you've seen our updated website or you've heard me say this before, don't shout out the answer, just wait for somebody else. But what I want to ask you is, if you've heard the riddle and if you can answer this, there's 5 frogs on a log. 4 decide to jump into the water. How many frogs are still on the log? Shout it out if you think you know. 5 frogs on a log.
5.
4 decide to jump. How many are still there?
All 5.
All 5. So you guys are so smart. So here's the answer. It's 5, right? Because there's a difference between intending to do something and doing it. How many times have we said, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to sleep better. I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to stop this or do that. What's important is that we have to figure out, okay, what is it that we want to do? But we have to dive in fully. We have to fully commit to it. It's like when we think about what matters most in our life, in order to be the best in that area, we have to fully dive in, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about with our first presentation here today. So jump ahead here. Okay, so we're going to go through and first and foremost about, let me mute you. Okay, so keep in mind, if you're not speaking, just go ahead and mute yourself just so it doesn't interfere. Okay, so who's our team? So you see all of us, you see myself and all of our ladies. We are all committed to helping other people. And here's what our commitment is. So we believe in lifestyle medicine. We believe in understanding what's going on with the body and figuring out what is the cause of these problems. If we're stressed, why are we stressed? If we're not getting good quality sleep, why is that? If we're having conflicting relationships, what is that? So we have to start to look at all these areas. And what's really important here is to understand that when you put these clusters of behaviors together, we get better. And not only do we really live a better life, but we thrive. It's like the secret sauce. So when you put all these together, it leads to a healthier life. And what's really amazing is a lot of you guys wrote this with your health goals. We can prevent chronic disease. We can treat and reverse chronic disease. We can improve our skin, our digestion. We can get off of medicines. We can fight old aging. You know, we can go through and do a lot of incredible things. Okay, so here's to really what we focus on when we're talking about lifestyle medicine. It's the combination of these 6 areas, okay? Just a reminder, go ahead and mute yourself. I don't know if that's you, Sophia, or anybody else, but let me go ahead and jump ahead. Okay, so here's our team. So you already met us, but you also see Dr. Brian Robson up there as well. So this is our team. So as mentioned, you know, over time, we want to certainly build out our team, but we want to have allies that believe in using the body to treat. So our lifestyle and how we live our life, unfortunately, leads to poor health, but we have the ability to make that better. All right, so if you take a look at our screen here, here's our goals. All right, so these are our health goals. So this is what you guys submitted. So you might see on here some of the ones that you wrote in there. So just a key thing here about the word cloud is that whatever's the biggest means it was the most common response, okay? So needless to say, probably 20 of you said lose weight or more. Eating healthy was the next top one. You'll see feel better, healthier lifestyle, lower cholesterol, keep going, sleep better, beach body, gain muscle, right? All kinds of different things. Also including other things around preventing chronic diseases and reversing chronic diseases. The things we're recommending throughout the challenge can absolutely help you reverse your diabetes potentially and get rid of heart disease and lower your cholesterol and really make some substantial changes in your life. So take a look here. And what's really important that we reflect on with this is that we're all together in this, okay? So myself included, I know for me, I have goals. I was excited because I'm like, all right, I'm ready for that reboot. I'm ready for that reset. So keep keep your goals top of mind, because what we oftentimes forget is we're always so focused on the how and the what, but we need to remember why. Okay, not just the what and the how, but why. Do we want to see our grandkids grow? Do we want to be at our kids' weddings? Do we want to be able to live a disease-free life? Do we want to be able to travel when we retire? Whatever it is, we deserve that. Okay, so this is really important that you keep your goal top of mind and that you stay close to that. So what we're going to do here is we're challenging you guys to certain behaviors. All right, now this involves a challenge. So keep in mind, with any challenge, there's some flexibility. Some of you might say, well, I do all this now. Some of you might say, oh, I'm far from this. Okay, but here's the thing. We're challenging you to get as close to this as possible. All right, so let me go through these, and then I have a slide for each just to kind of build out a little bit more. The first thing is to consume a mostly or all plant-based diet. All right, so when we use the term whole food plant-based diet, we are referring to whole unprocessed plant foods, not just vegan foods, okay? Because you can drink juice and eat chips all day and call that a vegan diet. It doesn't necessarily make it a healthful diet. So we're gonna challenge you nutritionally. The next area is we're gonna challenge you with sleep. Every single one of us should be shooting for 7 to 8, 7 to 9 hours a day. All right, some of you might be like, I'm good, I sleep 12, okay? Well, that might be a little much, but nonetheless, what we wanna do is we wanna shoot for that 7 to 8 hours, that 7 to 9. And here's what I always tell my students. The best way to have a good tomorrow is to get a good night's sleep today, okay? The best way for a good tomorrow is a good night's sleep today, okay? So as soon as we finish this Zoom session, get to bed. No, I'm just kidding. Some of you might be bedtime, but we're gonna talk about sleep. We're also gonna be talking about physical activity. Now, our kids, I told our kids about the challenge today. For those of you that don't know, we have 4 children, and said to my kids, we're starting the challenge, so we're gonna do it together as a family. And they started doing sit-ups and push-ups in the kitchen. And needless to say, they said, well, what's exercise? And I told them, and I said, basically, anytime you're playing and moving, and you're doing so on purpose, you know, and you're out moving, you're physically active. And the kids were like, well, we do that a lot. And we're like, yeah, you do plenty. All right. So needless to say, when we're making our kids do brain work, they're gonna be like, Dad, we got to do exercise. So needless to say, we got to move our bodies. So key word here is move more. We also want to focus on managing our stressors. Our stressors aren't going to be able to we're not going to be able to get rid of them. Oftentimes we can't say, well, you know, I'm just going to stop working. All right. Me being laid off, I can do that because I got laid off from my full-time job. But nonetheless, your stressors are still there. You're still going to have life stressors and things that come up. We're going to do our best to react to them in a positive way. Next to that is strengthening our relationships, is identifying what are the most important relationships that we have and how can we add value to those people? And how can we be the mom, father, son, brother, whatever that relationship is, how can we do that? Through day-to-day commitment of focusing on those relationships. And then the last one here is to avoid drugs, tobacco, and alcohol. Okay, so I'm not saying you can't ever have a little bit, but again, the goal, best case scenario is you use 0, all right? But if you limit yourself to a glass of wine a week or a night, if that's a big, you know, improvement for you, wherever you are, the goal for this is to be able to cleanse yourself of it, okay? And then lastly, we ask that you guys participate in the sessions wherever you can. But if you can't, we're gonna record them, we're gonna post them on our website so you guys can access, okay? So let me jump to our next slide. So speaking of nutrition specifically, when it comes to nutrition, again, what we're shooting for is not a vegan diet, it's a whole food plant-based diet, which means we eat from what we call in the plant-based world, the power plate. It's fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. Okay, so legumes, a little trivia here, are beans, peas, and lentils. This is what we want to compose our primary diet should be of these 4 groups. Let me say that again, fruits. If you remember from the first challenge, the rule with fruits is if you see fruit, eat it. Anybody remember that from January? Whole grains, it's eat them whole, okay? Eat whole grains, eat brown rice over white. Eat whole wheat pasta over white pasta. go through and figure out what the whole grains are in your diet and how you can eat more of them. In regards to legumes, you can eat tofu, soy products, soybeans, any type of bean, any type of lentil or peas. They all are incredibly beneficial. And one of the biggest staples in the longest lived people in the world, which are called the blue zones, is beans, okay? So try to incorporate beans into your diet daily. If you have a hard time with gas, just excuse yourself often, relieve it, and over time your belly will get a little bit used to the higher fiber diet. And then also things like avoiding and limiting processed foods. All right, so when you eat food, one thing that we want to think about is thinking, is what I'm about to eat going to add value to me? That's something we often have to look at. Look at the back of an Oreo and look at all the chemicals and additives and think, is this going to make me a better version of myself? And most times the answer is no. Put it back on the shelf. Or try not to even put it in your house, just because we are creatures of our environment, all right? So when it comes to eat smarter, we want to focus on fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. You might say to yourself, well, there's no way I'm giving up meat. All right, that's a personal choice. We all have free will, and so do you, okay? So here's the thing. For the challenge, figure out if you can eat less of it, okay? Figure out on that continuum how far you're willing to go. And then go through and look at that and say, okay, what can I do to progress and to take steps? You might say, all right, well, I'm used to having meat 3 meals a day. All right, maybe week 1, I go to meat once a day, maybe every dinner. Or you might go through and say, okay, how about, things like white rice? Could I switch to brown rice? Or could I eat, more whole unprocessed grains? Or, instead of eating fruit juice, can I switch to eating an apple or an orange or a grapefruit? Okay, so the key is to make steps in that direction, but keep in mind that you have the ability to customize it to fit yourself and where you are. All right, the next thing in these 2 words that I really want you to focus on here, I don't want to get overly technical with the physical activity and exercise, but the goal here is move more. Move your body. That's what we want to do. We want to absolutely move our body. We want to get going. And we want to move our body, okay? When I worked at Chrysler about 15, 16 years ago, there was a sign on the wall that said, a better mood is just a short walk away. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're frustrated or when you're in conflict. Just get away, walk away. Especially if you're married, walk away instead of saying something wrong, all right? Right, husbands, right, wives? Just walk away. John, walk away right now. But no, and when we're looking at, I think I saw somebody come in with a chat. Somebody asked about veggie pasta. Okay, so here's something that you can absolutely have veggie pastas. Keep in mind that it's grains mixed with veggies, or if you make your own, for a while there, you can use things like spaghetti squash, and you can use a spiralizer, and you can completely cut out the grains. That's also a great thing too, because whole wheat pasta, even though it's a whole grain, it's still a processed food. Nonetheless, we're not going to tell you have to get rid of whole wheat pasta. Just try to eat the best option that you can. All right, so when it comes to activity, move more, get outside. On the hot, muggy days, try to get out in the early morning or get out in the evening to avoid some of the hot, humid weather. But nonetheless, what we want to do here is we want to focus on doing more activity than we're currently doing. All right, so look at where you are and think, all right, well, I'm getting a little bit of activity. What are some areas in your life that you can do a little bit more? And you don't have to be overly intense. You don't have to go from not running to running 5 miles. You don't have to go from, 30 minutes a day to 2 hours a day. You don't have to do that. Do what works for you. But the concept here is we need to move. All right, next, in regards to sleep. Remember the quote I mentioned earlier, a better tomorrow is a good night's sleep tonight, okay? So we have to commit to getting enough sleep. Learn to turn the clicker off. Learn to shut the computer and learn to put the phone down. This is something that oftentimes I struggle with as well. And we need to look at it and say, I need to get my 7 hours. So if you have to get up at 6, work backwards. Say, all right, well, I need to be asleep by 11. So I need to start getting ready for bed at 10, 10:30. Or you might get up really early and you might say, okay, I get up at 5. All right, so if you're getting up at 5, then you need to be in bed by 10. Okay, so work backwards from when you know you have to get up. But start to use some of the tips and tactics that we have on our website as well to focus on good quality sleep. All right, so things like keeping the room cool. With us with a broken AC right now, that's not really possible. We just have the fan as close to us as possible. But nonetheless, work on getting good sleep and committing to 7 to 9 hours. That's our goal. All right, now stress. So here's something that we have to understand. Stress oftentimes comes in two buckets. One is things that are important but uncontrollable, okay? Important but uncontrollable. What you have to do is you have to cope. You have to accept and cope because you can't change it. That's the word uncontrollable, okay? This could be the loss of a loved one. You cannot change that. It happened. You have to cope and grieve and deal with it as best you can. An example of a stressor or a stress response that is important but controllable, you take action. Okay, so it could be your job is creating a lot of stress for you and you're having a lot of negative stress response. Figure out how you can create a more peaceful and more positive work environment. Is it that you're rushing every day to work and you start your day off and you're in traffic and then all day long you're spiraling because of the way you started your day? Maybe you get up 15, 20 minutes earlier and you leave for work earlier and you don't have that stress to start your day. So what we want to do is we want to look at the things in our life that we can make changes and then work from there. The next thing is creating healthier relationships, okay? So the phrase cultivate relationships means forming better relationships with the people that are in your life, okay? So you might have some relationships that you need to focus on more, or you need to say to yourself, how can I be a better dad or a better mom? I know for myself, I'm always looking to say, okay, how can I be better in the relationships I have? I'm far from perfect and I will always, not be perfect, but it's something that we can say to ourselves, how can I be better in this area? So one of the things that's important is twofold. If there's toxic relationships in your life, you need to separate yourself from that, okay? But if there are important relationships that you can't give up or you shouldn't give up, or you want to have, you need to spend time working on those relationships, all right? So this is something that all of us, maybe aren't perfect in this area, but this is something that we need to say, who are the important people in my life and how can I create some goals in this area? And just a quick mention, guys, the handout on the Commit to the Challenge, you can use it now or later, but underneath each of these 6 areas, I put in there a spot for you to go through and write, my personal goal for this area is, all right? So whoever you are, wherever you are right now in your life, start going through and thinking of a goal for each of these areas. Just pick one. You can pick multiple if you want, but go through and say, how can I strengthen relationships in my life? And then go through and set a tangible goal for that. And then lastly, of our 6, we want to avoid risky substances. Okay, so you want to avoid or minimize. If you're not willing to give up things like alcohol or tobacco, figure out how you can start to make progressive steps towards removing or eliminating them or lessening them. Instead of drinking two glasses of wine a day, maybe it's a glass or 2 of wine on a Saturday. All right, or instead of drinking 5 beers every day, maybe it's a beer with dinner, okay? So what we want to do is we want to start to work in a more positive direction as it relates to toxic substances, okay? And the reason being is that when it comes to things like heart disease and cancers, these are one of the first things we can do to really help ourselves out. All right, so by us eliminating some of these things from our lifestyle, we can absolutely start to move in a positive direction. All right, so what can be expected? So this is all the work, right? So you guys are probably thinking, this guy's crazy. These transformed people are nuts. All right, so now these are challenges that come with rewards, okay? So what gets rewarded gets completed, all right? So when we think about it, our bodies get better. Remember the glass of water from the cola to the water. Our bodies will start healing. Some of us within days, some of us within a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we're gonna start feeling incredible. All right, so what you have to understand here is that all the things you guys listed, from weight loss to healthier nutrition, to having more energy, to preventing or treating chronic diseases, all of those things can benefit from the challenge that we put in front of you, okay? And the last thing here is, I'll end with a quick analogy and then we're gonna move to our next session here is, and this is in the handout as well. If any of you have heard of John Maxwell, he's a mentor of mine, even though I've only met him once, but I recently joined the John Maxwell team and it's all about coaching and leadership. And he uses this analogy often, that's the power of 5. Okay, so the power of 5 is you have to know your priority. So each of you might be thinking, all right, what am I going to commit to during the challenge? Know your priority. And then from there, we're going to start to really go through and take some steps. So the analogy here is chopping down a tree. Okay, so the example here is know your priority, cut down the tree. Pretty simple. Okay, so the first thing is you have to have the right tools. So do you go out there with a baseball bat and start whacking the tree? Absolutely not. Nothing's going to happen. Your hands are going to hurt and you're going to be frustrated. You need an axe. Okay, so you need to get and use an axe. All right. Now, once you have the tool, the key thing is the next step for any of us is you got to take action. You have to swing the axe. Okay, so you swing the axe. All right, now you can't just swing the axe once and be like, I'm going to swing it next month. That tree is never going to come down. By the time you go back to whack it again, it's already going to have healed. Okay, so you have to be consistent. All right, so you have to stay focused and you have to focus on a certain spot. You can't whack a tree here, 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 here. Right, Julie's husband, Miles, he's an arborist. They do it and they know exactly where they're cutting so they can get the desired outcome. Okay, so when we think about it, you have to focus on what it is you're doing. All right, then with that, you have to then stay consistent and focus on doing this daily. All right, and then lastly, you stay with it till your goal is completed. All right, an example John mentioned earlier is he's got goals. Joan and John for their daughter's wedding. They're going to stay with it because they deserve it, right? They're going to know their priority and they're going to stay with it till they get there. So we have to know what the right actions are, put them with the right priorities, and then we can have incredible results. All right, so that's what we're hoping we can get from all of you guys with the challenge. All right, so let me go ahead and stop sharing here. So let me pause. Does anybody have any questions about what we just talked about in regards to committing to the challenge? Or shout it out if you think we're crazy. Take yourself off mute if you want to share, shout.
I have a question, John. When you say, I'm sorry, Steve, when you say completely plant-based, I'm a meat eater. I mean, that's what we've eaten. Are you saying cut down on the amount of meat? How about like seafood, fish, that kind of stuff?
Okay, so here's what we think about when we think about fish. So I'll answer your question in two parts. Fish is less bad. Okay, fish is not necessarily healthful. Okay, it's got tons of saturated fat, tons of cholesterol. So if I'm remembering your goals correctly, fish isn't going to do you any favors. Okay, so when we think about fish, it's promoted as some sort of super helpful thing. And Karen, jump in here too in regards to the fish. But what we're challenging everybody to is figuring out what you want to do. So if you want to try for 4 weeks, you can do anything for 4 weeks. If you want to try completely plant-based, that's up to you. Or if you want to limit and do a lot less, that's also your call as well. So I'm a bit general there. Karen, anything else to add for fish?
Well, one thing I want to add is I don't want to ever be the food police. Like, I don't want to be telling you what you can and can't eat, because you can eat whatever you desire, right? So more... And I think that's important for you to understand. Like, you have choices here, and we're setting a high bar for what is the optimal diet for humans based on lots of research studies, decades and decades of research studies. One other thing about fish, I don't agree that it's less harmful. It's one of the most toxic foods on the planet in terms of contaminants like mercury, plastics that are in the ocean. The ocean is very full of pollutants, and even in parts of the world where fish are wild caught, they still contain, you cut open their bellies, there's a great documentary about this, and they're full of plastic. And so when you eat their muscle, that is what you are consuming. So that's my spiel on fish. We'll talk about maybe sustainability another time.
Any other questions, guys, from anybody? What do we think? Do we think that that's impossible to do that? Do we think adding these 6 areas together and taking steps, do we think that's possible? Give me a thumbs up if you think you can commit to improving. Give me a thumbs up. All right, I'm seeing some thumbs, right? So absolutely, we all can progress and take steps. Okay, any other questions from anybody? Okay, so, and I appreciate you sharing that too, Karen. And this is, again, like I mentioned earlier about free will, is we don't want to come in and tell everybody what you have to do, right? You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to be on this challenge. You can stop at any time, right? We hope you don't. We hope you commit to it because you deserve to be better. But what we have to understand here is we all have to pick our own path. So when we think about it, like for myself, when I switched to a plant-based diet 3 years ago, I'm kind of all or nothing. So I jumped in and I didn't ever look back, right? But not everybody's like me. And this is not how can you be Steve or how can you be Karen or Sophia, right? This is how can you be yourself? How can you figure out how you can be the best version of you, all right? So that's the whole goal, is that we all need to focus on. And this is a good segue. We were going to do a little interactive session, but since we're ahead